Good morning, everyone. Welcome back to Soul. Thank you very much for joining me today. I'm really grateful that you're making time on a Tuesday morning or whenever you're listening to this to tune in. I hope you're having a wonderful day so far. And today, I'm very happy to announce that I'm actually not alone. I'm joined by Antonia Ivan, who is a feminine energy coach. And that's basically what we're going to be diving in on today. So, first and foremost, welcome, Antonia. Thank you so much for making time to join Soul today. I'm really excited to have you join me. And it's great to meet you.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to finally meet you and to have this beautiful conversation happening today. And the reason why I'm saying today is because we had that very interesting aspect yesterday going on astrologically between Venus and Saturn. So I think it ties in very, very well with the conversation that we're going to have today. So happy to be here.
I love that. Thank you again. Can you maybe start by introducing yourself and sharing a little bit about your journey and how you came to be a feminine energy coach?
Of course. So my name is Antonia. I am a psychic intuitive before I am a feminine energy coach. So many, many years ago, I started having glimpses of my psychic abilities, but at the time it was something very complicated for me to understand. And I was trying to get more rooted into the physical, into the 3D. And so when I started my spiritual journey over 10, 12 years ago, that's when I kind of tapped into my psychic abilities. And I started to get more tuned with my intuition. I was discovering more about the world and more about myself than I had ever known up until this point. And the way things shifted me into becoming a feminine energy coach is when I realized that I had this vast amount of inner wisdom. I was just knowing things, I was feeling things, I was seeing things in my head, that were solving other people's problems, especially when it comes to that feminine energy. So, at this point, I realized that, listen, I have to share this with other women. It's my purpose to do so. And that's how I ended up helping women, come back to self and get in touch with their true core authentic version of self, which we can only tap into after going through that big transformation, which is a journey and it has many stages, but that's what I do basically. And in a nutshell, that is my journey.
I love that. Thank you so much. I really like what you mentioned on the inner wisdom part as well. I'd love to hear a little bit more on how we would describe getting in tune with your feminine energy. What is the feminine energy, right? We hear that a lot. Feminine energy, masculine energy, the divine feminine. Tell me a little bit of how you can help explain where do we find this within ourselves?
That's a beautiful question. And you're right. There is like a lot of information out there, especially on social media, specifically on feminine energy. And there is a lot of misconceptions. Feminine energy is essentially a way of being. That is the shortest way I can put it. Feminine energy means connecting with your intuition first and foremost, because your intuition, that is your divine voice. That is the way source or God or Allah or, the universe, whoever you resonate with, talks to you and continues to encourage you and provide guidance on how you should be, connecting with your mission and how you should be tapping into that mission and purpose in life. And so when we want to connect with our intuition, we have a little helpers, as I call them. And the little big helpers are our emotions. Our emotions are here to guide us as to where we are, as to how we feel, as to how we connect with ourselves and how we connect with the environment. And so when we learn how to tap into our emotions and use our emotions as guides, as indicators, that's how we're able to understand ourselves. And another aspect of the feminine energy is being able to, translate the energy you feel and give it a physical shape and form. And that is when we connect with the masculine energy. Of course, we all have feminine and masculine energy. And the way we're looking to feminine and masculine in self and the way we look into the feminine as a woman and the masculine in a man is slightly different. But essentially, it's recognizing that feminine energy within yourself. It's what is it that you're following that brings you back to self and that brings you back to a state of alignment. But the feminine energy, like I said, it's a way of being. It's like learning how to voice ourselves. And for example, if you have something going on within your internal world, let's say you're sad or upset or something bothers you, it's how you express that. It's the way you communicate. It's learning how to communicate what's going on within your inner world out to the surrounding, out to the world, around you, so you could be understood by others. It's learning to hold space for yourself and learning to hold space for others. It's huge. There are different aspects of feminine energy. There are different archetypes when it comes to the female and the feminine energy. So it's huge. It's not something that we can put into a category, or we can kind of sum up. This is feminine energy. So that's why in a nutshell, I said it's a way of being. It's a way of connecting with yourself and the world.
I love that. I'm definitely going to be quoting you on that way of being, connecting with your intuition and tapping into your emotions. And I really like what you said about how it's how you express yourself. I think about this a lot in the workplace. A lot of people in the workplace, for instance, especially in the corporate world, there's always that image of, when you're wearing a suit and you're very corporate, that's very much a masculine thing. Whereas the woman is a lot more of people a lot of times throw out the word a soft CEO. You always think of a woman when you think of a soft CEO, someone who is soft spoken. It doesn't mean they're not strong. You still have that.
That's right.
Strength, that grit. So I really like that. And you mentioned the archetypes. I'd love to hear more about those.
So, if you go online and if you type female archetypes, you would see that there are 7, 11, 13, 15, whatever. And to me personally, they're 4. They're 4, just like, the 4 phases of the menstrual cycle, like the 4 seasons. Nature pretty much resembles the woman and the feminine energy. And so the very first archetype, that's the girl. So here's where we see the playful, the sweet, the innocent, the soft energy of the girl. Think of a little girl, how she's expressing herself, how she would go to her parents and be like, Mommy, Daddy, I want this, I like that. She has no shame. She has no boundaries in terms of like, she's not stopping herself. She's not holding herself. Like, she's just having fun with life. That's the first archetype. Then the second one is the seductress or the mistress. And when I say mistress, many women feel like a little triggered. I was like, oh, do I have to be a mistress? No, it's just, that seductive energy, being the lover. This is where our sexual energy rises and comes into the picture, and how we're able to enjoy life, how we're able to enjoy pleasure. And when it comes to pleasure, I mean the physical pleasure, the sexual pleasure, the emotional, the mental, how you're able to, look yourself in the mirror and just love what you see there. Not because you're like picture perfect, not because you're like, the Vogue type of 90s model, but because you love what you see, because you know how to connect with yourself, how to, feel passion for yourself, how to bring pleasure. So that's number 2. The next one, that is the queen, the queen archetype. This is where the woman has grown up to a point where she's got clearly defined boundaries. And the reason behind these boundaries is her self-worth, her own values. She knows what she's defending. She knows why she has these boundaries. We see on social media so much content on boundaries, that we need to build boundaries. We have to build boundaries. There is so much content teaching you how to do so. And if there is one thing that I can say here, that I deem very important, is you will not understand and learn how to build boundaries unless you know what you're defending, unless you know what you're standing up for. So that is when, the woman, she just knows who she is. She just knows her purpose. She's devoted to that purpose. And she's just on top of her game. And when I say on top of her game, I don't mean that she has everything lined up and everything figured out, because that's a myth. We go, through cycles in life. So that's never a thing really. But she she knows how to carry herself. She knows where her power lies. And she knows how to use that power, of course, to her benefit and also helping others. So that's number three. And the last one is it can come under different names. You can see it as a mother or a housewife or the lady. This is when a woman has reached that more mature stage where she's got enough life experience and she knows how to bring peace, how to bring comfort, how to nurture herself and others. And by the way, when I refer to these with like stages of life, I don't mean that you would reach these stages when you become a mother or when it's just an easier way to kind of explain what each stage kind of reflects on. Mm. So the last stage is more of a like emotional maturity, if that makes sense. And one thing I want to make clear is that we all have the four female archetypes. We can shift, we can tap into them whenever we like. For the most part, from what I've seen, the women, we all have two dominant archetypes that we like to kind of engage with more than the other two, but we have the ability to switch in between.
Oh, I find that incredibly interesting. And I like how you also described the seductress or the mistress, because a lot of times people think about that and their minds immediately go to like the Marilyn Monroes of the world, where obviously, as you were saying, maybe that was the dominant archetype, but it actually made me think of a few of the women. So I was in Brazil just a few weeks ago, and people always talk about how Rio, everyone's a model. And so I had this vision in my head that I would actually be meeting models, but actually what they meant is that their energy is very much what you said, which is like, you love what you see, you're so confident, comfortable. But the women there, like everyone was just being fully themselves. You'd expect to see people who are, fully Botoxed, fully, the Brazilian butt lifts and all that. But actually most of them, they had, and I keep repeating this to my friends, you could see their cellulite very clearly. You could see their stretch marks, but it was how they were presenting themselves and how they were carrying themselves and talking and that confidence they had. And also that flirty wittiness about them that I really felt resonated with that. So I find that incredibly interesting. And the fact that we have all four, and I guess I'd love to hear your thoughts. You'd say, because the girl obviously is something we have at the earliest stage, right? The first stage, but it kind of stays with us. And would you say that then, depending on who we are with or what situation we're with, that archetype is going to come out? So one is maybe going to dominate a little bit more.
Yes, but there is something else. And, every archetype has like an active stage and it also has a shadow stage. So, the girl, when she's in her shadow stage, or unhealthy, so to speak, kind of show up, she may be needy. She may be, throwing tantrums when things don't go her way. The seductress, for example, she may be using her body and she may be using her sexual energy to get what she wants. And that is also more of a shadow aspect. Same goes for the queen. She could be the cold-hearted, the boss bee. She could be wanting to control and to manipulate and to have things going her way. And the last one, the housewife or the lady, she could become a doormat because she's trying to provide comfort for everybody but herself. And we see that very often. I've had clients like this of women who have had their career, they have had their family and everything, and they've put so much work and so much energy into their family to then have a husband who's cheating or a husband who's left her for a younger woman. Her kids don't show up the respect towards her because she's forgotten who she is and because she's going into that very shadow phase of the archetype. So it all comes with balance, and it all comes with, something that I teach a lot in my content and with clients one-to-one is self-awareness. It's that conscious awareness. And I attach a very deep and very special meaning to self-awareness. And it's being able to see things beyond, to see beyond what it is. Being able to be so in tune with your surrounding and what you're going through that you can derive the lesson and you can derive the experience and why you're going through what you're going. And I think that when you have that self-awareness, when you reach that level of self-awareness, you can very easily maneuver between the stages, between the archetypes, and you can, catch yourself rather quick if you tap into the shadow aspect of any of those.
Oh, I
So
absolutely love that. Self-awareness. Always step number one is self-awareness. We
for
have to be
sure.
aware. Absolutely. And on that, a lot of people, again, they may have misconceptions about this. I'm curious to hear what would you find are some of the biggest misconceptions that people have about either feminine energy or again getting in tune with that divine feminine and how to change that perception.
There are many. There are many. Honestly, countless. The first one that pops into my mind is that feminine energy is about the feminine look. It's just what you mentioned when you were in Brazil and you were expecting to see something specific. Feminine energy is not about how you look. There's countless of examples of women who are not even that attractive, as per the aesthetic criteria.
Stereotype, yeah.
Yes. And yet their energy is so magnetic and they're like alluring men and alluring things towards them. And they're master manifestors because they have tapped into their energy. And then you have, the other extreme where a woman is so beautiful, picture perfect, the Vogue model, and she's so alone and her life is a mess and she's depressed. And I am speaking from experience because before I tapped into all that I'm talking about right now, I used to be one of these women, where I would walk on the street and men will be whistling and turning their heads. And, I would be getting the question, are you a model? And yet, I was lacking so much of that feminine energy because I thought it was just the looks, as long as you look beautiful, as long as you're well dressed, that's it. You're the most feminine woman. Little did I know. So that is one of the misconceptions that we see very often. Another one is that feminine energy is basically how you attract a man. It's, I'm sure you've seen this type of content, how to get the man, how to make him obsessed, how to get him to chase you. And honey, just stop right there. Feminine energy is not about getting the guy, because when you get the guy, when you get him to propose, when you get him to marry you, you start the family, and then what? Then what happens with you? So is that your mission to get the guy? That's not feminine energy. All these manipulations and little tactics that are taught by women who just don't understand feminine energy to women who don't understand feminine energy, it always backfires because, all these sort of how to behave and what to say and, be the mysterious woman and don't reply to him straight away. Don't show your feelings. To a very, very, very small degree, we talk about dark feminine energy, but to a very small degree, because dark feminine energy is not a bad energy. It's just powerful energy. It's the magnetic energy. It's the queen and it's the seductress. These two archetypes make up the dark feminine. And when you're working with this super powerful energy, and when you don't understand energy, when you don't know what you're doing, it ends up, backfiring at you. So girls, if you're listening, don't buy for this content. Don't go for it. Just get in touch with yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. I see that a lot. A lot of people. I met this girl who, I mean, I don't know her very well. I don't know her story, so obviously, absolutely no judgment there. But I recall the goal was just to get married, which is fine if that's what you're looking for. But she had started to get a lot of that content on social media, which is how to seduce a man, how to keep a man, how to make him miss you, and that the algorithm was quite messed up. So no, I think that's great the way that you describe the dark feminine energy, that it's a type of energy that's magnetic. It's not necessarily dark like dark magic or something.
No,
It's yeah. No,
certainly not. It can be used in that way, if you have the bad intentions and the bad agenda. But one thing that we need to remember is energy is energy. And so the law of attraction and the law of vibration pretty much work its game there. And so when you start to do something with an agenda, and that agenda is, I want something that is external of me. So, it's external. I want that something to come into me. Yeah, okay. It is going to come to you eventually. But sorry, I thought you froze for a second. It is going to come to you eventually, but then it's going to go away because your agenda has an expiry date. And so when we work with energy, it's very important to understand how energy works, and that when you want something that is outside of you, you are essentially giving your power away to something that is external of you. And so this is why in my one-to-one coaching, I always advise women, when you get to know yourself, when you get into an alignment with yourself, when you recognize that inner goddess, this is when you become unstoppable. This is when you activate that magnetic energy, because you don't attract from outside, you attract from within. So anything that you birth into existence, whether physical, whether, emotional, whatever, it comes from within you. So it's naturally yours. But deciding that you want to attract something just because somebody gave you some step-by-step guide, no, don't waste your energy on this. So it's just a little disclaimer there.
yeah, no, absolutely. And it sounds quite manipulative as well when it's like, here are 10
It
steps
is.
to head the guide, to get the guide. And when it
No,
comes, to what you just said, I really like that it's when it's external, that's not really your energy, that could have an expiry date. And that plays a lot with like manipulation as a type
it
of
does.
tool, as
It
opposed to
does.
things that are internal. And I'd love to get your thoughts if there are specific practices, rituals, techniques that you would recommend to people who are starting their journey with trying to, again, embrace that internal feminine energy.
Of course. So when I was on that journey at the very beginning, I was going through a very rough period. And when I say rough period, I mean everything was falling apart. I had a forced career change. The guy I was with, that was the catalyst of the whole spiritual journey, sort of twin flame connection, anyways. And my dad died as well at the same time. So it was a period where, you feel very lost and you feel very disconnected. And like everything that you've dreamed about or everything you wanted to achieve is kind of falling in pieces right in front of you. And so at that time, I realized I needed to withdraw myself from the world as I knew it and discover a different world. So that is a step number one. When you feel so disconnected or when you're at the beginning of this journey, you need to take a step back from everything that you know to be your world and allow yourself to discover a new world. And the way you're going to do this is, how I mentioned earlier, building self-awareness by getting to know yourself. And in that process, I discovered something that I had named with a very long name. I used to call it the triple or the 3 Ps, like P is in P apostrophe S, pillars formula. So I need to come up with a shorter name. But essentially, it's like we have 3 Ps. So the first P stands for peace. You need to bring the peace back into your life, because if there is like a chaos going on in your life, you're pretty much disconnected from your feminine and you've tapped into your masculine and you're trying to live your life doing the feminine things from a masculine energy point. And it's not working well. So bringing that peace. And how do we bring peace? By being present, by, being in the moment and not outsourcing our energy elsewhere. So when you're doing something, so let's say we're doing this podcast right now, I'm not thinking about, I have to go to the gym after the podcast, then I've got a video to post, then I've got because that's how you outsource your energy. 10% of your energy goes to this and 20 to this. And then you're almost like left with no energy to be present. So that's why bringing ourselves into the present is key. That's number one. The second P stands for passion. And when I say passion, I don't mean your usual Sunday hobby that you like to do to just chill. I mean the kind of passion that ignites a fire within you. And every woman has that. Every woman has that. Now, whether she's discovered it or not, that's a different topic. But every woman has it, because when you ignite that passion, that is when you glow, and that is when you feel that you have tapped into that unlimited source of inspiration within self. And the feminine energy is this. She's the inspiration, and the masculine is the inspired actions, right? So that's the second P. And the last P, last but not least, is pleasure. Like I mentioned earlier, you need to bring pleasure into your life in all shapes and forms. Emotional pleasure, physical pleasure, sexual pleasure, mental pleasure. When you sit and eat your breakfast, have your breakfast, don't have the TV on, don't have Netflix on, don't have your best friend or whoever on the phone whilst you're trying to grab a bite, and it's this kind of crazy picture. No, sit and enjoy. You're having a piece of fruit, get into the senses of what you're feeling while you're having this, I don't know, spoon of whatever, papaya, or I don't know, avocado, or anything. I had papaya earlier. That's why it came to my mind. But you have to engage your senses, because the sensuality is very strong with feminine energy. And when you do all this, you allow yourself to receive, because receptiveness is, it's key when we talk about feminine energy. And you expose yourself to your own world. You engage with your senses, with your emotions, with your feelings. You're in the moment. So the 3 Ps changed my life. Bringing peace into your life, engaging with your passion, and bringing pleasure in everything you do. Because when you're able to, engage with each one of these, that is when you connect with your inner goddess. That's when she activates, and that's when you begin to move through the inner goddess. So I would say that is the most important practice or technique or way of being. You can call it as you like.
Yeah.
Of course, sorry to interrupt.
No.
There are many others. You can do the journaling, you can do moving your body, you can do the EFT tapping, all these things. But I've found the 3 Ps has been the most profound for me and for my clients, because it works on different aspects with the feminine energy.
And
So,
and
yeah.
I can attest to this. I remember, I think it was last year, that you had posted a kind of a document. I can't remember what it was called. If you remember what it was.
Probably a post. No.
It was
Was it a
PM.
work? It's a
a
workbook. Yes.
Yeah, I remember last year you posted a workbook, and I figured I'm gonna go through it. Like I said, I do enjoy your content very much, and I find it super interesting what you do. And I went through it, and you mentioned the 3 Ps, and
Yeah.
I thought it was a really good way to really connect and understand what are the things and what is within me that does in fact bring me peace, is my passion, and is also pleasure.
Mhm.
And I was reading a book at the time, and they talked about how important it is to savor things. And that speaks to that pleasure you were mentioning, that it's not
Of
just
course.
pleasure or movement or doing different things, but really just taking a moment. And he said, even if when you're taking a bite from that papaya or that avocado, sometimes just closing your eyes and feeling it with your body,
Yeah.
that's really important. So I absolutely love that. And that activates your inner goddess.
It does. It certainly does.
That's
You
like,
know, I implemented this myself, like I mentioned earlier, when I was going through that difficult phase of my life where I was moving from the, unconscious state of being on that journey to consciously stepping into it. And when I had to withdraw myself from the world as I knew it, and I had to, get in touch with myself in new ways and getting to know yourself, trying different things. I started baking. I started like painting and I started singing, doing so many things that I wasn't doing. And it's not about being perfect at them. It's about trying different things and just observe how they make you feel. So you can experience, different emotions on the spectrum of our emotions, because, if we only know a few feelings, then it's very difficult for us to kind of grow into that spectrum, if that makes sense. Um, so yeah, and that is when I connected with that inner goddess. And trust me, before that, we're talking a couple of years ago, of course, there wasn't as much content on feminine energy. I didn't even know. I never even heard of the term divine feminine energy. It was only after I started tapping into this field and into, my inner world, that I was like, okay, so that is very feminine. And that's when I started, talking and thinking of feminine energy. So, it's essentially getting to know yourself in all these areas.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's wonderful. I'm curious, on behalf of the listeners, where can we learn more about you, your brand, your work? If there's anything specific you'd want to share with the audience as well.
I am active on Instagram. I was going through a little bit of a rebranding, but I'm back on Instagram now. So Antonia.Ivan is my Instagram, and my website, which is AntoniaIvan.com. I am going to be coming on YouTube shortly, but this is something that I will announce later on in my Instagram. So that's pretty much it, I would say.
Oh, lovely. No, thank you for that. And if our listeners if there's one thing you want to leave us with today, what would you say that is?
Right. Let me
take your time,
me
obviously. That one
yeah.
was not a question, but I'm thinking now because I know that we're slowly coming to the end.
Okay. The feminine energy journey is precisely this, a journey. And it has different stages. And in every stage, we'll learn different things. We learn vulnerability, because vulnerability is a woman's strength. It's not a weakness. Being vulnerable means being able to show up for who you are authentically, in your essence, in your core. There is no agenda. There is no, hidden stuff going on. You just come about the way you are, and that is your power. Now, in order for you to be vulnerable, you need to learn how to receive. And that could be a struggle for many, because for most women who have come from, operating in that distorted masculine, receptiveness means a transaction, means, okay, so you're offering to give me something, then I immediately start thinking, what do I need to do back for you, to clear that deal. And receptiveness is the feminine's birthright. She receives, so in everything that we discussed earlier, we can apply to learn how to be open and to learn how to receive by engaging, with our senses. In order to be vulnerable and learn to receive, we also need to have very strong boundaries. This is why people, I believe, mistake vulnerability for weakness, because they think, oh, vulnerability means somebody can manipulate you and take advantage of you. Not at all. If you have strong boundaries, if you know what your values are, you are just this piece of a magnet of treasure, and it's very well guarded. And when I say guarded, I don't mean in a masculine way where, oh no, I don't let you in, because we trust. That's another one. When you have these boundaries, you're able to trust. You trust yourself, and that's why you trust the world, because you know that you show up for who you are, you're able to receive, you know exactly who you are, and you know where the boundaries are. So you know what you're willing to tolerate, what you're willing to accept, and what you're not. So it's a journey, but it starts with getting to know yourself.
I love that. Thank you so much. And what a great way, what a great note to end on as well.
Of course.
The feminine energy being a way of being, understanding and recognizing it, the 4 archetypes, knowing the active and the shadow, when to tap into each one. And then the 3 steps you mentioned, if you are going through something like the incredible journey you mentioned. And from taking a step back, the three P's: peace, passion, and pleasure, and then trying different things to tap into new feelings. I love that. And of course, most importantly, that vulnerability is a strength. We need to have boundaries and ultimately work on activating our inner goddess. So thank you so much for that. Thank you so much for making time to be here with me. I really appreciate this. This was fascinating for me as well, and I'm sure it is for our listeners.
Of
I will
course.
be sure to share with everyone the handle and the website as well when we post about this. But
Thank
yes, have
you.
a lovely rest of your week. And for the listeners, everything we learn here, as always, we do step by step, day by day. Thank you for your time, and I will see you next week on Soul.